The NBA playoffs, to me at least, is the most magical space on earth. While the one-and-done format feels like a July box office blockbuster and a 7-game series feels like an Apple TV original, give me the 7-game series 7 days out of the week. Because unlike the slight unpredictability a one-and-done situation brings, by Game 7, barring injuries, 10 times out of 10, the better team in the series is the one that moves on. And while round ones in any format usually produce the most lackluster outcomes, that cannot be said for what the Clippers and Spurs gave us in 2015. That series is an absolute hidden gem, but to fully appreciate that first round matchup that featured 5 future Hall of Famers, let me just turn the clock back a bit and refresh you on what the NBA looked like in 2014. Going into the 69th, NBA season, the experts were all over the place, especially when talking about the Los Angeles Clippers and San Antonio Spurs. San Antonio was fresh off of just dominating the entire league. They had the most regular season wins, flew through the playoffs, reached the finals, and then throttled a LeBron-led Miami squad in 5. Now, while sifting through decade-old predictions and avoiding all the Bill Simmons jump scares, the common thread for each respective team seemed to be this. San Antonio was the safe pick to come out of the West. ESPN and Bleacher Report overwhelmingly had them not only winning the conference, but also repeating and winning the finals. As for the Clippers, they were viewed as a dark horse title contender with their floor being a second round appearance, and I don't know why, but CBS especially was on their knees for Lob City that year. And other than the annual LeBron pick, people were really high on Blake to win MVP that year. Outside of the Clippers and Spurs, analysts thought the Hawks would be mid, the Cavs would come out of the East, and that the Warriors wouldn't be better with Kerr.
What the fuck?
As the season kicked off, and looking at pre-All-Star break numbers, the narratives and expectations for both teams seemed to match what was expected of them before the season started. The Clippers were the best offense in the league, the Spurs had a top 5 defense, and both teams were within 2 games of the 3 seed. Also, by All-Star break, both teams had played each other 3 times, with the Spurs winning 2 out of those 3 games. I will say too, as a not-so-subtle foreshadow here, outside of a MIA Danny Green, everything about this CP3 attempted layup is nearly bar for bar what we experience 6 months later.
For LA in the 4th, Chris Paul driving and can't quite get the layup to go. Griffin goes to the floor and tries here to call a timeout.
As for post All-Star break, both teams just gas it. They both tie at 21 wins. Both peak at reaching the 2 seed just days before the season ends, and both finished winning 11 out of their last 12 regular season games. It's not even a debate. The Clippers and Spurs at that time were both the hottest team entering the playoffs that year. But even though the Blazers had 4 more losses than the Grizzlies and Spurs, because they won the Northwest Division, they were able to leapfrog their way up to the 4 seed that year. Which honestly, in hindsight, thank God for that stupid rule, because what NBA fans experienced from mid-April to early May was pure magic. I think why I feel like this playoff series is the most underrated is because how overlooked the stakes were for it being just a first-round matchup. Chris Paul was still ringless in year 4 with LA. Blake missed the most amount of games since his rookie year due to a staph infection, and Doc was trying to defeat the narrative that he's just riding off his 08 chip. And that's just the Clippers POV. The Spurs were looking to repeat, were favorites entering the season, and were definitely on borrowed time with a 37-year-old Manu and a 38-year-old Duncan. Meaning, for both teams, a first-round exit would be a nightmare. Looking back and rewatching that game 1 was interesting because it gave out the blueprint for how both teams would eventually beat the other. It wasn't a total surprise because All year, the Clippers had a horrific bench. But when you have only 3 players off your bench play more than 5 minutes that game, and for the Spurs, the bench was clearly the blueprint. We see it on full display to start that second. The Clippers go into that quarter up by 12, and within a minute and 50 seconds, that lead evaporates to 2. And that's honestly how the second quarter and a majority of the third played out. Clips go on a run, they get gas, Spurs climb back. Except after these possessions,
oh my God,
it was wraps in the 2-1-3.
Great pass, what a pass! Oh, and he trapped the sledgehammer. Ball on the floor, so 3 starters. Oh, what a move, what a spin, and what a dunk!
That first Blake poster especially was the nail in that game 1. After that, San Antonio was only able to get within single digits once. And again, Marco Bellinelli off the bench in the 4th started getting hot, but this time the Clippers starting 5 was out there, and obviously it was way too much for the Spurs to handle. Immediately in game 2, you could feel how tight this game was gonna be. You could tell Pop and the Spurs were playing Blake much more aggressive early on, but neither team had an answer for either big. Going into the 4th with the Spurs up by 3, for the most part, momentum was pretty even. That switched up real quick with LA still getting piped by Tim, resulting in a 11-4 run by San Antonio to start the 4th. The Clippers do end up cutting that lead in half down to 5, but with momentum swinging again, the Spurs employ Hack a DJ for nearly 3 whole game minutes. And looking back, the game could have easily been put away during this stretch. DJ ends up shooting 4 of 10 from the line. Tony leaves the game due to a calf injury. Manu follows out, and the Spurs only put up 4 points while the Clippers put up 11 and lead by 2 with less than a minute remaining. But it wouldn't be a Lob City Doc Rivers playoff game without a horrendous choke job. Blake has an awful turnover, CP fouls Patty Mills, Patty of course makes both, and then Chris Paul tries this over Tim Duncan for a game winner. Blake again has a beyond questionable turnover, and the Spurs immediately capitalize and put the bow on game 2. With Manu and Tony back, and the Spurs playing in San Antonio for the first time in the series.
Oh, frick.
The Clippers got throttled in game 3. The Spurs, and Kawhi specifically, had this game wrapped in 3 quarters. Tim and Tony didn't even need to see the 4th. Kawhi and Manu each played like 3 minutes that quarter, and while the lead at one point was 33, San Antonio eventually walked out of that game 3 with a 27-point win. While game 4 had its moments, and the Clippers avoiding a 3-1 deficit and instead win in San Antonio is noteworthy, in my opinion, game 5 is where the series just starts magic maxing. With the series tied at 2-2 and the game tied at 82 to start the 4th, there was no doubt that the final frame was going to be must-see. And mamma mia, did Blake play like straight diarrhea, from shooting 1 of 9 that 4th quarter to having the chance to tie the game at 107 and doing this.
Maneuvers, Griffin for the tie, rejected by Duncan! Rejected by Duncan!
And maybe I'm being a bit nitpicky, but to this day, I will never understand how a 4 that thrived off of tossing lobs to his 5 with the game on the line instead goes for the contested floater over 7-foot Tim Duncan. But above all that, the Spurs championship DNA and mentality was on full display when closing out that game, which in return gave them a 3-2 lead and a chance to move on and win game 6 back in San Antonio. I'm gonna be honest, because I haven't touched on it up until this point, but clearly I'm a Clippers fan. I grew up a Clippers fan, and while I'm approaching this video with a neutral point of view, I'd be lying if I didn't admit, going to that game 6 at the time, I thought the Clippers were beyond cooked, and I had every reason to feel that way. The team that wins that pivotal game 5 in a 2-2 scenario goes on to win the entire series 82% of the time. As for game 6, and after a half that saw both teams tied at 51, Shocker. Entering the fourth, the Clippers had slight momentum on their side with a 4-point lead. Going back in time and reviewing this series, I didn't know when I would bring it up until I got halfway through the fourth in this game 6. Tony Parker was an absolute liability the entire series. Heading into this game, Tony was 19 of 58 from the field. And spoiler alert, he goes 4 of 12 in this game 6, making sure to maintain that sweet 32% from the field. And I understand he bruised his thigh and rolled his ankle in that game too. But I would like to think even Spurs fans would agree that even though Tony was the youngest out of that aging Spurs trio, he by far played the worst. And even with Boris Diaw and Marco Bellinelli putting up a combined 40 points, Kawhi and Tony's 7 of 27 proved to be just too overbearing, allowing the Clippers to escape Game 6 with the 6-point win. If I had to bring evidence to defend my Apple TV series over box office blockbuster take, I'm going Better Call Saul mode in that courtroom with this Game 7 as the evidence. Take all the pre-series narratives, add what the last 6 games just gave us, and the cherry on top, this was the only Game 7 in the first round, meaning every NBA fan was tuned into what CBS at the time called the greatest single day in sports history. And as if this series needed any more drama, with a little over 2 minutes left in the first, this happens.
But right here, as you just see, Chris Paul, he grabs his hamstring. You do not like seeing this, but you like seeing that.
In an unprecedented 82-game season for CP3, having to head to the locker room in a Game 7 with a soft tissue injury felt especially cruel. But credit to especially Jamal Crawford, because being able to tread water and only be down by 1 by the time Chris checks back in, I think goes extremely unnoticed. What the last 7 seconds and on gave NBA fans,
oh my God,
I don't think has ever been remotely replicated in a round 1. Just give a listen to this Kevin Harlan call yourself.
7 seconds should they snare the rebound, and they do. Here comes the hobbling Chris Paul with a long three. Got it! He got it! At the buzzer!
Going into the fourth from San Antonio's side, Tony was having his best game by far, and Kawhi, Danny, and Tim were all shooting above 50% and in double digits. To also put in perspective just how chaotic this game was, with 7:41 still left in the fourth, the game had already seen 25 lead changes. Attempting to keep that stat from growing, Coach Pop has Danny Green intentionally foul DJ, sending him to the line where he was an abysmal 2 of 7. And not to totally jump ahead, but that happened at the 5:58 mark. And even though DJ splits at the line, he immediately got subbed off and didn't see the floor again until there was 13 seconds left in the game, which on one hand allowed Tim Duncan to go to absolute work in the paint, but on the other, it allowed the Clippers offense to play so much more spaced out. And that's what both teams did. Tim was a perfect 4-4 in that final frame. JJ hit back-to-back threes, and after shooting fouls by both teams in the last 20 seconds, the Clippers had possession in a tie game with 8.8 on the clock. Now, do you remember when I showed you that shot Chris took way back in their first matchup of the regular season? I'm gonna let you either relive or have a first experience with the next 7 seconds here, but either way, just keep that last play in the back of your brain.
Green on Paul, and God, he got it! 1 second left! Clippers by 2!
I will say, while we all remember the game winner, and that's great, the shot clock operator misfiring the buzzer, allowing the Clippers to prematurely see the Spurs play, seems completely forgotten about. Because of that mistake, Matt Barnes is perfectly able to time out Kawhi's dive to the rim and swat away the alley. And just like that, the final buzzer sounds to a 7-game series that was decided by a total of 7 points. The defending champs are eliminated, and a hobbled, emotional Chris Paul and the Clippers advance to the second round. The immediate and gradual impact for both teams is mixed. at best. While San Antonio did re-sign Tim and Manu, gave Kawhi the max, and signed a back-to-back All-Star in LaMarcus Aldridge that following offseason, we had clearly just began the Warriors and Cavs era, and no one was stopping that. And even though they went 67-15 and only lost one home game that year, they would eventually get bounced in the second round in what would be Tim's final year in the NBA. As for the Clippers, what started out as a dream second round turned into an absolute nightmare. After somehow going up 3-1 with the first two games missing Chris Paul, Game 6 would prove to be one of the worst collapses in NBA history. While up by 19 with 2 minutes left in the third, in LA, up 3-1 with Harden on the bench, Josh Smith and Corey Brewer would combine for 29 points and walk out of a shocked Staples with a Game 6 win. The Clippers would go on and lose that Game 7 as well. But in hindsight, I think that Game 6 specifically was where the Lob City chapter was officially shut. But I want to hear from you. What were your memories during that first round series? Do you have a more underrated series than what the Clippers and Spurs gave us in 2015? Also, per usual, wanted to shout out this comment from Dank Waffies from last month's video. Being called Unk? That hurts, but I appreciate you. Outside of that, that's gonna do it for today's video. If you're not subscribed, dude, I literally have a degree in casual takes. You're gonna want to subscribe and hit that like button. But that's officially it for me today. I will see y'all in the next one.